So the state of video games is constantly getting worse, it seems, with almost every passing year. Around the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One era, we started to see an increase in video games coming out in not just buggy, but downright unfinished states. And as of recent, those games have seemingly increased. It seems almost any AAA game that comes out is most likely going to have a day one patch, which is basically an update to the game that is supposed to iron out any minor bug fixes or any major bugs or glitches. For example, with Marvel's Avengers, there was a huge day one patch that fixed like a ridiculous number of glitches that the developers seem to have encountered while they were playtesting the game. And when the game still came out, there were an insane amount of unplayable sections of the game, which led a lot of people to believe, how many did they actually fix and how did the game even operate before the patch? Now, in recent memory, games such as Cyberpunk 2077, which was probably one of the most anticipated games of, I would say, probably the last 5 years, came out completely unplayable. And it's now in a state of, this is probably how the game, not even probably, this is how the game should have been upon release. And I think a major issue that we're having is the redemption or the long haul of video games today. So I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I play just about any Star Wars game that interests me. And in 2017, we had a game come out called Star Wars Battlefront 2. I'm sure you guys know about it. It's very infamous around the time due to a lot of practices that I think have kind of fizzled out in video games with loot boxes. I'm not sure if a lot of games still do that. The game came out, and not to say that the game was necessarily buggy, but the game didn't have the backing it would have needed to sustain a lifelong of longevity upon the gaming community. So what the developers did was they locked in and they essentially improved the game over time. And Battlefront 2 now has become one of the most beloved games of the Star Wars community, just like the OG Battlefront 2. However, the game is now technically out of service. There's no people working on the game. There might be a little update every now and then, but there's no active work going into the game, which does suck. A lot of content that we were asking for hasn't been put into the game, and there are still tons and tons of somewhat unplayable or broken elements of the game in terms of gameplay. For example, you can do this thing called parrying that players have discovered, where essentially you hold the block button and then you hit R2 if you're a lightsaber hero, and essentially you almost lose no stamina and you can attack your enemy and they take all the damage and you don't. Hell, even I partake in it. But what I'm really concerned about is, why do we keep allowing developers to essentially not give us a full package? And I know the main issue is that it's not really the developer's fault, because for the most part it's going to be the publisher, the main heads in charge, saying, hey, this is the deadline we want, this is all you have, figure it the fuck out. And that leads to games having those day one patches that are supposed to put in features or iron out anything that probably got overlooked within the main game. But video games didn't used to always be like that. If the game came out, that was what you had. It had everything in it. And as much as I love Star Wars, it was downright insulting that we had to wait to have, probably you could say, the main character of Star Wars, Anakin Skywalker. He was like one of the last updates in the game. And it's not even just that. Let's say games like Rainbow Six Siege, another game I play a lot. That game definitely was a little rough at the start. I joined Rainbow with me and my friend probably in year one, around when Blackbeard and Valkyrie came out. So I think that's like year 1, season 2 or whatever, but the game is constantly getting updates, and it's definitely not how it used to be. I would say Siege probably peaked a couple seasons ago, but the fact that developers are able to drop a game that is, for lack of better words, bad, and are able to improve upon it with countless updates and years long's worth of content is something that is kind of strange to me, because now with video games, it's like you're not buying the game as it is. You're kind of getting it as a sort of investment, if that makes sense. And hopefully it pays off. For the people who like Cyberpunk 2077, I'll try to give it a couple goes. It plays fairly well on the PS5. As far as those people go, they got a good money back with their investment. You know what I mean? Like it definitely is a lot better than what I was seeing back in 2020 and 2021. Because that game looked insane. It's crazy to me that we're allowing this, if that makes sense. So one of the games that I'm currently playing right now is Marvel Spider-Man 2. And there are a lot of features that are not in the game. For example, a big one is New Game Plus. And what a lot of developers are also doing now is, I'm assuming essentially they're going under crunch time, that they have to postpone in-game like content that makes sense, like a New Game Plus, and they have to postpone it for another update. And this could also be a thing where if the retention of the game, say, isn't getting played as much anymore, when they drop a New Game Plus update, it brings back players, and then it hikes back up in terms of playtime. That's where a lot of the live service games, that's how they usually make their profit, is they usually drop a huge update or an event. People come back and they play the game, and they might see something such as like a battle pass or something. They might fork their cash over. But with regular games, it's just weird to me that some of these features aren't in the game already. For example, too, as you're probably watching this, I'm playing God of War Ragnarok. God of War didn't even have New Game Plus to begin with. I think New Game Plus came out in like March or like April. Same thing with the first game. It's just like, I don't understand why developers, or I should say publishers, giving the developers such a limited amount of time to fully create a game with minimum problems, but they'll give them a set date, and then they'll drop the game, and it's like all the reviews are coming in negative, and everyone's scratching their head. It's like, well, yeah, you didn't give them enough time. Like, I assure you, as much as people probably don't like Call of Duty, I assure you, if they took a good break and Activision was like, okay, y'all just do y'all thing, y'all take as much time as you need, I guarantee you, if that game were to come back, it would be a smash hit. For example, Modern Warfare 2019. That, in recent memory, is probably one of the best Call of Duty games in terms of gameplay. It's just, it's not really an argument to be had. That game was great, and it still had its bugs and issues, of course, but when you give people time to perfect their craft and the art that goes into video games, you have good results. Now, redemptions in video games are few and far between. Of course, there are some games that try to, like Marvel's Avengers, but they never really get their footing, and unfortunately, they canceled the service to those games. And I really hope that this is just like a phase in video games. I really hope this isn't going to be the future where you are investing into a game, essentially. You're playing the long haul. There right now aren't any video games I'm currently looking forward to. There is one game in particular, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and that's looking like it's going to be the next game where they drop it sucks and throughout patch and update around the final update, then it's going to be worth getting the game. Then it's going to be a finished package. And I don't think that's how video games should work. And sadly, of course, yeah, that's not how it should be, but it is how it is right now.